Blackstone Audio presents The Paper Moon by Andrea Camilleri, translated by Stephen Sartorelli. Chapter 1. The alarm rang, as it had done every morning for the past year, at 7:30, but he had woken up a fraction of a second before the bell. The release of the spring that set off the ringing had sufficed. He therefore had time, before jumping out of bed, to look over at the window and realize from the light that the day promised to be a fine one, without clouds. Afterwards, he just barely had time to make coffee, drink a cup, do what he needed to do, shave and shower, drink another cup, fire up a cigarette, get dressed, go outside, get in his car, and pull up at the station at 9, all at the slapstick speed of Larry Seaman or Charlie Chaplin. Up until 1 year earlier, his morning wake-up routine had followed different rules, and most of all, there was no rush. No 100-meter dashes. First, no alarm clock. Montalbano was in the habit of opening his eyes naturally after a night's sleep, with no need of external stimuli. He did have an alarm clock of sorts, but it was inside him, buried somewhere in his brain. He merely had to set it before falling asleep, telling himself, "Don't forget, you have to get up tomorrow at 6." And the next morning his eyes would pop open at 6 o'clock sharp. He'd always considered the alarm clock, the metal kind, an instrument of torture. The 3 or 4 times he'd had to use that drill-like noise to wake up, because Livia, who had to leave the next morning, didn't trust his inner alarm, he'd spent the rest of the day with a headache. Then Livia, after a squabble, bought a plastic alarm clock that, instead of ringing, made an electronic sound, a kind of unending beep, rather like a little fly that had found its way into your ear and got stuck inside. Enough to drive you crazy. He'd ended up throwing it out the window, which triggered another memorable spat. Second, he would wake himself up intentionally a bit earlier than necessary, some 10 minutes earlier at the very least. These were the best 10 minutes of the day ahead. Ah, how wonderful it was to lie there in bed, under the covers, thinking of idiocies. Should I buy that book everybody's calling a masterpiece or not? Should I eat out today or come home and scarf down what Adelina's prepared for me? Should I or shouldn't I tell Livia that I can't wear the shoes she bought me because they're too tight? That sort of thing, poking about with the mind, while carefully avoiding, however, any thought of sex or women. That could be dangerous terrain at that hour, unless Livia were there sleeping beside him, ready and happy to face the consequences. One morning a year earlier, however, things had suddenly changed. He had barely opened his eyes, calculating that he had a scant 15 minutes to devote to his mental dawdlings.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?